All right, part two, industrialization. And so, as a result of the transportation revolution and the major advances in agriculture, we start to see the development of factories and a massive transformation in how people work in the American North. Right? We kind of talked a little bit about this already, but it's just the idea that work is going to move from the home to the factory. Work is going to move to being paid for hourly work as opposed to what you produce, and there's going to be an increasing disconnect between the stuff you produce, between what you do and the stuff you produce. For instance, you're not going to make a whole suit or t-shirt anymore. You're going to make a part of a t-shirt and then like the thread of a t-shirt, right? And so it's going to be an increasing disconnect. And so the craftsmen and factory owners become employees, and there's going to be a little bit less class mobility, a lot less class mobility, because prior to this, you're a craftsman, you have an apprentice, you own a shop. The apprentice then graduates, owns their own shop, on class mobility. Now we start to see workers staying as workers, um, just getting paid very little and being exploited, and not a lot of class mobility. The upper class is going to own the factories. The middle class is going to run the factories, right, as managers, and the working class is going to actually staff the factories as, right, especially as workers. So again, we start to see a rise of long hours, low wages, unsanitary buildings with poor light and ventilation, and the workers are going to be increasingly exploited, especially child laborers. So we start to see females moving into the workplace in these very exploited and harsh conditions. The Lowell mill girls are going to be one example. So Frederick Haddock Lowell, in the 1920s, creates textile manufacturing in Lowell, Massachusetts, kind of the famous first one, employing young girls from rural New England. It's just more exciting and different than working on the farm. Farms are going out of business, and there's less to do on the farms. And so there's this availability of workers, and the Lowell mills become a model for industrial production, where cotton is going to be turned into finished cloth in the same roof. So it's not going to be a putting out system where it comes to your house. It's going to be you go to the workplace and work. So there's a gender component to it, like women are going to have access to a cash economy, which is good, and be able to leave the house, which is good, but they're leaving the house in a exploitative and kind of untenable situation. All right, and so this is all due to the mass production of cotton, and so under all this is the exploitation and mistreatment of people under through the slave system, like producing of cotton. And we start to see the key point about interchangeable parts, especially in gun manufacturing in Massachusetts. So this transforms manufacturing by allowing the mass production of goods by kind of laying the foundation for modern assembly lines. If a part breaks, you just simply replace it with a new one. And so again, it's these commercial changes and inventions that allow for this massive industrialization. The sewing machine is a key component to this because, again, this dramatically increases the overall speed and level of production that people are going to be involved with. And so we start to see the rise of factories, either along transportation routes, along rivers, or especially along streams initially. The streams water power is going to be powering the factories until it gets replaced by electricity. And so they're in kind of really weird areas. You find them today, kind of dotting the weird landscape of New England, but again, along rivers. These jobs do promise economic independence and the ability to produce mass goods. For instance, I'm always producing my work to buy stuff, essentially, or buy stuff for my kids, or buy stuff for my families, or buy stuff that I want to enjoy. And so I'm willing to work harder now as a way to buy more stuff, kind of a cyclical effect. So I have to work harder to buy more stuff, and then I want to buy more stuff, so I work harder, right? And so it's always this desire, and we're kind of living in this desire to go out Amazon or Temu or Shein. We always need stuff. We're going to increasingly work for this stuff that marks our class, who we are, and demonstrates our ability to buy stuff. And my kids will do anything if I promise them money that they can go out and buy stuff with. Obviously, they're not being exploited, but they are being incentivized to work for money. So factory girls are going to work for 12 to 13 hours a day, few opportunities to share any dissatisfaction and working conditions. And much like today, not saying it's bad, but we still see a gendering of occupations, with nursing, domestic service, and teaching being the big ones. Okay. After the 1830s, we're going to see a rise in steam-powered factories, the rise of steam engines, allowed factories to operate anywhere, leading to the manufacturing growth of manufacturing cities. So Pittsburgh and Cincinnati become industrial hubs off the use of steam power, kind of frees factories up from water power, which is a huge revolution as well. So we go from from water to steam to electricity, which allows factories just to take place anywhere. These working women are single. They're expected to leave their paying jobs upon marriage. And overall, things are improving slightly over the course of the 1820s and not in the 1920s, 1820s and 1830s. And more people, men, get the right to vote. They form political party, especially the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is going to have a weird history, which we'll get to in a minute. A lot of the power increasingly goes to the South. A lot of these guys become Republicans in a couple of decades. And there's demands, like a 10-hour workday that Van Buren establishes for federal workers and leading to some states to do it for all workers. Slight improvement in working conditions and slight rise in wages over this time period. So again, it's not great, and it's a huge transformation in how people are thinking and what people are doing. People are advocating for labor strikes and better working conditions, for higher wages. But as we'll see with immigration, it's a supply and demand issue and this is a constant theme throughout American history. Fears that immigrant labor is going to replace quote unquote hardworking Americans. And in the 1820s and 1830s, this is largely true, as if people demand higher wages, they simply get fired and replaced, right? There's no kind of guarantee of employment. We start to see the rise of unions and gains in working conditions, but panics that happen on a regular basis during the 19th century kind of erased these gains. So the economy's humming along, is doing quite well. All of a sudden, the panic sets in. Maybe a bank fails. Maybe there's some speculation that things aren't going that well. People don't distrust the economy. People take all their money out of the bank. The bank fails. All of a sudden, they're not buying things. Factories close. The loans get called in. Factories have to close, and unemployment skyrockets. And once unemployment skyrockets, then people aren't going to have the ability to demand higher wages. And so key in all this is that industrialization enables both agriculture and urban manufacturing to expand, right? We start to see the rise of industrialized farms that are going to be pushed by technology, steel plows, bigger tractors. And we need to have an agricultural revolution if we're going to have an urban manufacturing revolution, right? Think about them. They're connected. You have to feed the workers in the city if you're going to have workers in the city, right? They have to be able to have this massive surplus of food in order for these workers to eat. And so industrialization depends on both agriculture and urban manufacturing. So it's not a decline in agriculture, it's a massive expansion in agriculture, which has massive transformations in rural areas with the rise of large farms as well. So people are going to buy ready-made clothing, which is interesting. Textiles always pushes industrialization. And to some degree, we're still dealing with this, right? We always want cheaper and cheaper clothes, whether it be Amazon to Shein to Temu, always kind of in the market for cheaper clothes, and it's always dealing with exploited workers, or largely dealing with exploited workers from the American North, the American South to Mexico, overseas to China, from China to maybe Bangladesh or Thailand. Like you can see just the mistreatment of workers in textile manufacturing. They just want to make Nikes or T-shirts or clothes as cheap as possible. And somewhat ironically, there's a cycle going on here, right? In the South, plantation owners are manufacturing cotton. It goes to the North. They then buy ready-made cheap clothes for their enslaved workforce. And plantation owners are always looking to save a buck. They're always looking for cheap manufactured clothes. They don't care really what it is. not for themselves, but for them slaves. And so right, the cotton literally kind of goes in a big circle along with the money. Just reverse, right? The North buys the cotton and then gets the money back when they sell the T-shirts. And so what we see is the rise of corn in the American West as it's easily transportable, can be used for animal feed, and also turned into whiskey. And so you're thinking about what you're going to grow. You're not going to think about what you're going to consume, but what you could sell on a market. These markets need cities. These markets need railroads. These markets need new forms of transportation and production. And so we start to see the ability to mass produce stuff like with a steel plow, which is hugely revolutionary, one of the biggest changes in agricultural revolution production in like 1,000 years. And then the tractor and reaper, which again transforms things. So an acre is basically how much work a farmer can do in a day. But now we start to see things like the reaper and mechanized agriculture enabling a single farmer to do the work of 5 people, right? So now it's 5 times more productive. The farms can get 5 times bigger, and the food production can grow 5 times. There's an exponential increase in food production. And you're not going to grow stuff you're going to consume, right? You're going to grow stuff you're going to sell. But the irony is you're going to sell stuff to the market. In order to produce the stuff you're going to sell, you have to take out loans. The only way you can ever pay back the bank is by continually expanding your farm, kind of like cotton in the American South. The only way you can continually productively expand your farm is by buying more stuff, the tractors and technology to do so. So therefore, you have to take out more loans. And so it's this cycle of indebtedness and need for more markets. And of course, once production reaches certain levels, the prices kind of fall. There's just not an unlimited demand. It's a huge demand for U.S. food, but it's not unlimited demand. And so this is another huge issue, right? The ability to maintain a constant price or a good price for these food production that's skyrocketing, and the ability to produce food. But if you think about the modern world is able to have 8 billion people because of this amazing way in which we produce food on a bigger and bigger scale than ever before, and farms are more and more effective and efficient than ever before. And so what we see are women supplementing farmer incomes. Rural people are becoming scarcer, more connected to markets, and more kind of connected to the financial booms and busts of the United States. And so when the Panic of 1837 hits, it's going to have a massive ripple effect on rural areas as well, because now the farmers are not going to have the ability to pay back the loans. The bank's going to foreclose on the loan, and the farmers are going to be displaced. And so we start to think about Jefferson's small farmer. Well, these small farmers aren't the ideal, aren't the reality in the American Midwest, as they're being increasingly drawn to commercialized farms. And so the free independent thinker, independent farmer that Jefferson is idealizing simply doesn't exist, as these small farms give way to these massive industrial farms. You have industrial farms and industrial cities. All right. And so this leads to changes in gender as well, where women are going to be increasingly responsible for this quote unquote moral power. The good thing is they're marrying for love as opposed to just parental arrangement. The child starts to develop as a thing with a distinct life stage. If you're middle class, you have your own child's room and toys. You spend a lot of money on your kids, right? I imagine we all spend more money than we want on our kids. Smaller families lead to more child-centered families, shaping the child in terms of virtue, in terms of civic education, in terms of the ability to read and write, not just disciplining them. So thinking about their character, their education, how they fit into this new republic, as opposed to just kind of the stereotypical discipline that you might associate with the factories. And so increasingly women have more economic power as they're working in factories, but families are trying to keep their kids closer to home than ever before. More women aren't married. Some are just moving to the West, where they have more choice than men. Others are just simply refusing to marry, and now because they can have a job for really as long as they want. They could be economically productive for as long as they want. It's not dependent on having a husband and being at home.